Hi everyone! In this video I'll explain how I draw clothing. I'm going to try to give you fundamental and universal tips, but keep in mind that some techniques might be specific to my art style, so feel free to adapt and experiment on your own. Before we start drawing clothes, let's understand material. Clothing is made out of fabric, which is a soft and thin material, which means its shape is fluid and adapts to the objects around it. The way the fabric behaves will change depending on the kind of material it is. Thin fabrics create more folds and are more flowy, while thick ones are more blocky and firm. Another thing to consider is the texture of the fabric, whether it's smooth or rough. This will also impact the coloring, as silky fabrics have more highlights. Once we have an idea of what material we are working with, we can start drawing the clothes on a character. I recommend always drawing the body even if it's going to be covered up. This will help to visualize the way the fabric will behave on the body. I start drawing clothes by recognizing the points of tension. They are the points from where the fabric is suspended from, which dictate the direction of the folds. In case of a simple shirt, the points will be around the neckline and shoulders. It's also important to note where the sleeve will be connected. The more oversized a shirt is, the further away from the shoulder the sleeve seam will be. I recommend not drawing too many folds and keeping the layout as simple as possible, adding more definition during coloring. When coloring, I like to add a gradient, with the lower half of the shirt being darker and the top lighter. This creates some more depth. I would also like to explain drawing patterns on clothing. You need to visualize whether the clothing folds inwards or outwards, or simpler if it sticks out or folds in. The folds sticking out will make the pattern appear closer to the viewer, aka appear higher than the baseline level, while the inward folds will make the pattern lower. Also keep in mind how the fabric curves around the body. Before we continue the tutorial, I want to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Now that summer is here, I have more time and energy to develop as an artist, and I want to learn how to build an online presence to change a hobby into a career. It's made very fun and easy by Skillshare. It's the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of online classes and members. It's the place to get inspired while exploring new skills and honing the ones you already have. There are so many topics to discover with Skillshare, including marketing, creative writing, graphic design, film, and many more. Finding the right resources is made easy by learning paths, which are curated sequential class collections to master a specific skill. Thanks to them, you have a clear direction and can easily keep track of your progress and stay motivated. I've been enjoying the Become a Freelance Illustrator path, which is a great guide on how to grow as an artist and develop professional skills. The class I've been taking is Make Your Art Time Management for Creatives by Prince & Plant Studio, which teaches you effective time management tools to schedule your creative practice and build your business. It has great tips on how to make time for your art and have a consistent schedule to build an online presence. You can also get started on learning new skills using Skillshare. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now let's add shadows. I first add the dark shadows on the edges of the fabric pieces and the biggest clothing folds. Then I add lighter shadows which will show the material sagging. This creates a three-dimensional structure showing where the fabric sticks out and where it folds inwards. The more loose the material is, the more shadows it will have. Light clothes don't have much variety in depth to them, which is why they appear quite flat on the body. This is why I prefer drawing oversized clothes, because their shape language is more interesting. You can also differentiate the thickness and texture of the fabric using the shading. Very thin fabric will have a lot of shadows, and the folds sticking out will be quite thin and flowy, while thick materials will have more blocky and big folds. To make clothing look silky and smooth, I like to blend the shading and soften the edges, while for coarse materials, I keep the harder edges. Next, I add highlights on the edges of clothing folds to further enhance depth variety. And lastly, I like to add an outline on the edges of the shadows with different colors. Let's move on to bottoms. The points of tension on pants are on the waistline and at the top of the legs. Usually the fabric will fall straight down the leg and then start punching up at the bottom, which will create zigzag folds. Bagger pants will have bigger folds. I recommend drawing a fly piece, pockets, and seam lines at the side of the legs, which will help add some definition to the pants. When drawing skirts, the points of tension will be around the waist. When the top of the skirt is bunched up, it will create folds in a semi-tubular shape and waves at the bottom. I use pretty much the same coloring method for the pants as shirts. Baggy pants have bigger shadows due to the increase in depth variety. Depending on the structure of the pants or skirt, sometimes I also add folds going across the abdomen, to show material hanging on both sides of the waist sagging. Now that we have a basic understanding of fabric and structure of clothes, we can use our knowledge to draw some more dynamic and complicated poses. Just like before, we first want to draw the body, which will be our foundation. It's very important to make sure the silhouette of the character stays intact and not lose the dynamism of the pose. In this case, I will achieve that by mixing the fit of the clothes, wearing a tight crop top with an oversized jacket and big pants. It's also important to note that clothing folds look different depending on the perspective. When they're looked at from above, they curve downwards, and from below, they curve upwards. First, I recommend focusing on the silhouette and outer shapes of the clothes, and later defining the clothing folds inside. When drawing tight clothes, I recommend drawing them separately from the surface of the skin so they don't look like they're connected. To make the jacket look less flat, I include a bit of the underside of the fabric. Also make sure to add definition to the different parts of the jacket, like the hood connecting to the zipper and the sleeve seam. It's important to create realistic structures for the clothing. When drawing the sleeve, we encounter a point of compression, where the clothing compresses at the elbow. This causes an accumulation of clothing folds. When drawing sleeves, you basically need to pinpoint the shoulder, elbow, and hand, and draw the fabric falling from the direction of each of them. Pressing an arm will create multiple layers of folds, some in the front of the sleeve and some in the back, since the sleeve is attached around the body. When drawing big puffy sleeves, we also add zigzag folds at the end of the sleeves and fabric accumulating at the cuffs. In drawing pants, the compression points are around the knee, which is where the folds will be accumulated. In the case of baggy pants, I also like adding some folds on the fly piece to show material sagging. Additionally, I also add folds on outer pockets and draw belts twisting around to add to the shape language. Now let's focus a bit on adding movement to the clothing. The principle is very similar to what we did before. We identify the points from which the fabric is suspended and draw the fabric falling from that direction. The intensity of the movement will depend on the kind of material it is. Fine fabric are more flowy and dynamic, while thick fabrics won't move as much since they're heavier. One of my favorite pieces of clothing to draw are skirts, since they're great for conveying movement. A pleated skirt is comprised of multiple pieces of fabric connected in a kind of zigzag pattern. The fabric underside will be visible where the skirt bends. The shape of pleated skirts and other types of non-puffy skirts will be affected by the body, so when the leg is raised, the skirt will bend along with it. Non-pleated skirts work similarly, except instead of zigzags, they are waves. And that's how you draw ruffles, created by compressing fabric at the top, which creates a lot of small semi-tubular shapes at the bottom. Using these methods, we can draw ornate dresses, which consist of many layers. Let's go back to coloring. As I mentioned before, I like to add gradients to the flat colors. I tend to go with a soft brush on overlay mode, a color similar to the skin color on top of the clothes. I think this helps to blend the colors a bit and also add some more depth. Next I will add the lighting. First block out the area which will be covered in light, and then erase around the edges to create shapes of the clothing folds. In the areas where the fabric is stretched and there aren't any folds, the lighting will have a soft edge. To make the contrast between light and shadow less harsh, I also use a soft brush on low opacity around the lighted areas. Next I add shadows on a layer on multiply mode. I start by adding dark shadows on the edges and the biggest clothing folds, as well as the underside of clothes. Then I add lighter shadows on the insides to show material sagging. The shadow of clothing folds have a sort of triangular shape. The more baggier the clothes, the more depth, variety, and shadows they will have. I recommend not relying on the line art and trying to visualize the three-dimensional structure the shading creates. The shadows are the parts where the fabric curves inwards, and the light where it curves upwards, so they should make sense and align with the curves of the body. The more rigid and firm the fabric is, the more blocky and angular those curves will be. If the fabric is smooth, they will be more soft and flowy. To add some more color variety, I like to change the color on the edge of the shadow, adding a more reddish tone on the top and right, and a bluish one on the left and bottom. And lastly, I'll be adding highlights. Since the lighted areas are fabric curving upwards, the highlights will be sort of on the bridge of those areas. The amount of highlights will vary depending on the type of material. Another finishing touch I like to sometimes add is a bluish light on the underside of clothes, which helps to distinguish the depth. And that's pretty much everything covered. I hope this was helpful, and please leave a like if you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what else you'd like me to make a video about. Thank you for watching and bye bye!